The invention of the airplane. The airplane. The story of two men who dared to defy gravity. A spoken word journey through dreams, failures, and the skies. Before the flight, the world was bound by gravity. For thousands of years, humans walked, humans rode horses, humans sailed the seas, but the sky, that was for the birds. Not men, that was for the birds. The idea of flying, it was a joke, a fantasy, a fairy tale. But deep in the heart of dreamers, a whisper stirred. What if we weren't meant to stay on the ground also? What if we weren't meant to stay on the ground as well? The brothers who changed history. In the late 1800s in Dayton, Ohio, lived two quite curious brothers, Wilbur and Orville Wright. Listen, they didn't have any engineering degrees. They didn't have any government support. They just owned a bicycle shop. They had scraped knees, oil-stained fingers, and an obsession. Since they were kids, they watched the birds and asked, how do they do it? How do they do it? What law lets feathers conquer the sky? What law lets feathers conquer the sky? They studied, experimented, they read everything from bird flight patterns to air current. They read everything from bird flight patterns to air current. They failed, rebuilt, failed, rebuilt, failed again. Most people saw them as weird, foolish, and wasting time. But the Wright brothers didn't need a crowd to believe. They just needed each other. But the Wright brothers didn't need a crowd to believe. They just needed each other. They struggled to fly. They built gliders, tested on windy sands of a kitty hawk in North Carolina. They built gliders, tested on the windy sands of Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. Crash after crash, bones bruised, pride shattered. Bones were bruised, pride was shattered when the aircraft crashed after crash. But listen to this. But they got back up every time. People laughed. Even scientists dismissed them. Even newspapers ignored their work. But failure didn't stop them. It taught them. I want to repeat this. Failure didn't stop them. It taught them. They discovered lift, thrust, drag, and control. Because of their failure, they learned lift, thrust, drag, and control. Not just wings, but how to balance in air like birds. They learned also how to balance in air like birds. Listen to this. And on December 17, 1903, it finally happened. 17 December 1903, it finally happened. The first flight. On that cold morning, with wind in their faces and the world still sleeping, Orville climbed onto their handmade flying machine, the Wright Flyer. They call it the Wright Flyer. So Orville climbed onto their handmade flying machine. It had fabric wings, a wooden propeller, and a 12 horsepower engine. It looked like it would collapse with a sneeze. But they believed. He hit the throttle. The engine roared. And for 12 seconds, he flew. And for 12 seconds, he flew. Only 120 feet. But enough to change the history forever. You know, the world laughed. Then they finally looked up. At first, people didn't believe. Even after dozens of flights, newspapers didn't even report it. But they kept flying longer, higher, and further. And then the world couldn't ignore it anymore. The military called. The inventors followed. Governments invested. And within decades, planes crossed oceans. Listen to this, guys. And within decades, because the Wright brothers didn't give up, they fought through the laughter, even when people didn't believe them. The military couldn't ignore it anymore. The military called, the investors followed, and the government started investing. And listen to this. And within decades, the planes crossed the oceans. Families delivered food, mail, and medicine in different countries. Fought in wars. You know, it saved lives. Took astronauts to the edge of the space. All because the two brothers from a bicycle shop refused to stop believing. All because the two brothers from a bicycle shop refused to stop believing. The cause of the flight. When the government started investing and the investors followed, people died while testing these planes. Engineers went broke. Wars sped up development but left blood on the wings. And even today, flight isn't always perfect. But that was once impossible. Is now normal. But what was once impossible is now normal. Because two men didn't wait for permission, they just flew. What was once impossible is now normal because two men didn't wait for permission, they just flew. The lesson that I'm getting here is your dreams were meant to fly. Your dreams were meant to fly. You may not have wings. You may not have a degree. You may not have money or support or applause. But if you've got a vision, if you've got faith and a little bit of wind in your soul, you can fly too. You can fly too. Because flight didn't begin in the sky. It began in the heart. Loko va ku vutisa ku famba na mani, va byele ku u famba na matimu Fortune Maxava, kutani ndzi ri a hi xaveni mihandzu ya moya ku nga rirhandzu ni ku tsaka ni kurhula ni ku yingisela ni ku tsakelana ni vunene ni ku tshembeka ni ku olova ni ku tikhoma, twana verini ve ri a ku na nawu lowu alaka leswo tani, kutani ndzi ri a hi xaveni vutlhari hi nga byi xavisi, a hi xaveni vutivi hi nga byi xavisi. Inkomu.